In 1907, a portrait was painted. The subject was a young girl named Ailani. She was smiling. This was unusual for the time. Most portraits from that era showed stern, serious faces. People did not smile for the camera or the canvas. It was considered improper. Formal poses were expected. Expressions were supposed to be dignified and reserved. But Ailani smiled. Her expression was warm and genuine. It felt modern, almost out of place. The painting was beautiful. It captured something rare. It captured a moment of joy that seemed to transcend its historical period. The portrait was created by a man named Luca. He was a painter. He worked in a small studio and took commissions from families and local dignitaries. Luca was not famous, but he was skilled. He had a steady reputation in his community. People trusted him to capture their likenesses with accuracy and grace. He had been painting for over 20 years. His work was known for its attention to detail and its sensitivity to the character of his subjects. Ailani was his niece. He painted her with care and affection. The bond between uncle and niece was evident in every brushstroke. The portrait showed her in a simple dress with a locket around her neck. The background was plain and understated. The focus was entirely on her face and that captivating smile. Her eyes sparkled with life. Her posture was relaxed and natural. For over a century, the painting remained with the family. It passed from one generation to the next. It hung on walls in parlors and hallways. It was cared for, but not professionally. No one thought to have it cleaned or restored. Time took its toll. The varnish yellowed. Dust and grime settled into the cracks of the paint. The colors faded. The details became harder to see. The portrait that once glowed with life now looked dim and tired. The smile that had been so striking was now hidden beneath layers of accumulated dirt. Family members grew accustomed to its faded appearance. They forgot what it had once looked like. To them, this was simply how the painting had always been. Recently, the painting was acquired by a museum. The institution was called the Bridgeport Art Institute. The staff at the museum were excited about the acquisition. The portrait was a celebrated find. It was a rare example of early 20th century portraiture. The museum wanted to display it. Art historians on staff recognized the quality of the work. They saw potential in the painting despite its deteriorated condition. But first, it needed to be restored. The layers of dirt and old varnish had to be removed. The original colors had to be brought back to life. The painting needed to be returned to its original glory so that visitors could appreciate it properly. The museum assigned the project to its lead conservator. Her name was Cora. She was one of the best in her field. Cora had restored dozens of paintings. She understood the delicate chemistry of old paint and varnish. She knew how to remove grime without damaging the original work. She had trained at prestigious institutions and had worked on major collections. Her expertise was widely recognized. She approached every project with patience and precision. The portrait of Ailani was no different. Cora began her work in the conservation lab. The room was bright and sterile. Tools were laid out on a clean table. The painting rested on an easel under strong lights. Cora examined every inch of the surface before beginning. She took detailed photographs. She made notes about the condition of the paint and canvas. Cora worked slowly. She used solvents and cotton swabs. She removed the yellowed varnish square inch by square inch. The process took weeks. Each section required careful attention. She could not rush. One mistake could damage the painting permanently. As the grime lifted, the colors began to emerge. The reds in Ailani's dress became brighter. The tones of her skin warmed. Her smile became more vibrant. It was like watching the painting come back to life. Cora felt the satisfaction that came with every successful restoration. She was revealing something that had been hidden for decades. She was bringing beauty back into the world. Then Cora reached the locket. It hung on a simple chain around Ailani's neck. At first, it looked like nothing more than a small oval pendant. But as Cora cleaned the surface, something unexpected appeared. There was a mark on the locket. It was dark and deliberate. It was not a shadow or a trick of the light. It was a symbol. Cora stopped. She set down her tools. She leaned in closer. Under magnification, the shape became clear. It was precise and intentional. It had been painted there. The lines were sharp and clean. This was not accidental damage or deterioration. Someone had deliberately added this mark to the painting. Cora felt a chill. The symbol looked wrong. It did not belong. She had seen enough historical paintings to know when something was out of place. This was one of those moments. The symbol had a quality that felt different from the rest of the painting. The style did not match. The technique seemed foreign to the artist's hand. She took high-resolution photographs of the locket. She adjusted the lighting to capture every detail. She shared them with the museum's curator. The curator's name was Leo. He was responsible for the research and documentation of the museum's collection. He had been with the museum for 15 years. He knew the collection intimately. When Leo saw the photos, he was equally troubled. The symbol was unfamiliar to him, but it was clearly significant. It had been hidden under layers of grime for decades. Why was it there? What did it mean? These questions demanded answers. Leo began an investigation. He started with the artist. Luca's life was well documented. He had kept letters and records. Leo spent days in the museum's archives reading through them carefully. Luca's correspondence showed him to be a conventional man. He wrote about commissions, family gatherings, and local events. His concerns were ordinary. He worried about money. He celebrated the births of nieces and nephews. He complained about the weather and the quality of his supplies. There was nothing radical or unusual in his words. He did not associate with extremist groups. He did not write about controversial politics. He attended church regularly. He was a member of local civic organizations. He was, by all accounts, a respectable and ordinary portrait painter. His reputation was solid and unblemished. Leo also traced the painting's history. After Luca's death in 1920, the portrait passed to his sister. She was Ilani's mother. The painting had sentimental value to her. It was one of the last works her brother had completed before his health declined. When she died in 1928, it went to her son. His name was Elias. Elias was Ilani's brother. The painting remained in his possession for many years. He never married. He lived alone in a small apartment. The painting hung in his living room for decades. Eventually, it was inherited by his descendants. The most recent owner was a man named Owen. He was the one who sold it to the Bridgeport Art Institute. Owen knew little about the painting's history. He only remembered that it had hung in his family home for as long as he could remember. It had been in a back bedroom, gathering dust. He had decided to sell it during an estate cleanup. Leo contacted a specialist. The specialist's name was Alexander. He was a professor who studied symbols and iconography. He had spent his career identifying the marks and emblems of historical groups and movements. His knowledge was encyclopedic. He had published several books on the subject. Museums and institutions around the world consulted him regularly. Alexander examined the photographs of the locket. He studied them for several minutes in silence. His identification was immediate. The symbol belonged to a small extremist political sect. The group had been active in Europe in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. They were associated with anarchy and violent upheaval. They opposed existing governments and social structures. Their philosophy was radical and uncompromising. Police monitored them closely. Their meetings were often raided. Their publications were banned. Members were arrested. The group was considered dangerous. In every sense, the group was forbidden. Their ideology had no place in polite society. This discovery created a crisis. Why would a child in 1907 be wearing the emblem of a radical political group? The question was deeply unsettling. Was Luca secretly a member of this sect? Had he hidden a political message in an innocent family portrait? Was Ilani herself aware of the symbol's meaning? Had she been indoctrinated into extremist beliefs at a young age? These questions had no easy answers. The implications were serious. They threatened to rewrite the understanding of both the artist and his work. The museum could not display the painting without an explanation. The symbol was too disturbing to ignore. Visitors would see it. They would ask questions. The museum needed to have answers. The reputation of both the painting and the institution was at stake. But Cora was not convinced. Something about the symbol bothered her. It was not just the meaning. It was the paint itself. The texture felt different. The way it sat on the surface seemed wrong. She returned to the lab and examined the locket under stronger magnification. She brought in additional equipment. She used specialized lighting to see beneath the surface layers. She took samples of the pigment. The samples were tiny, almost invisible, but they were enough. She ran chemical tests. The laboratory analysis took several days. The results were shocking. The paint used for the symbol was different from the rest of the painting. It contained compounds that were not commonly used by artists in 1907. These compounds did not become widespread until the 1930s. The chemistry was unmistakable. The symbol had not been painted in 1907. It had been added decades later. Someone had altered the painting long after Luca's death. This changed everything. Luca was not responsible for the symbol. He had never painted it. The painting had been altered long after his death. His reputation was cleared. He was innocent of any association with extremist politics. The investigation shifted. Leo returned to the family history. He focused on Elias, Ilani's brother. Elias had owned the painting for the longest period. He had possessed it from 1928 until his death in 1953. That was 25 years, more than enough time to make alterations. Leo searched for records. He visited libraries and archives. He looked through census documents, newspaper clippings, and legal files. He contacted historical societies. What he discovered was troubling and illuminating. In the 1930s, Elias had become involved in fringe political movements. The evidence was scattered but consistent. He wrote pamphlets. He attended meetings. His writings echoed the same extremist ideology as the group identified by Alexander. The language was harsh and uncompromising. He called for the overthrow of established order. He advocated for radical change. His views were extreme even by the standards of political radicals. Elias had been the black sheep of the family. His relatives avoided him. They found his views embarrassing and dangerous. He was not invited to family gatherings. His name was rarely mentioned. His views had caused rifts that never healed. He died alone in the 1950s. The painting passed to his nephew and eventually to Owen. No one had examined it closely during those transitions. No one had noticed the symbol hidden beneath the yellowed varnish. Leo contacted Owen. He explained what had been discovered. He asked about his great-uncle Elias. Owen remembered him vaguely. Family members rarely spoke about Elias. The few stories that survived painted an unflattering picture. He had been angry and difficult. He had argued with everyone. He had been obsessed with radical politics. He had distributed pamphlets on street corners. He had been arrested once for disturbing the peace. The family had been mortified. Owen confirmed that Elias had been the sole owner of the painting during the 1930s and 1940s. No one else had access to it during that time. Elias had lived alone. He rarely allowed visitors. The painting had been entirely under his control. The full picture became clear. Ilani had been an innocent child. She had known nothing of extremist politics. She had simply been a girl who smiled for her uncle's portrait. Luca had been an ordinary painter. He had captured his niece with skill and affection. The portrait had been a simple, beautiful work of art. It had been an expression of familial love and artistic skill. But decades later, Elias had defaced it. He had painted the forbidden symbol onto his sister's locket. He had projected his own dark ideology onto her memory. It was an act of vandalism. It was also an act of betrayal. Ailani had died young in 1918 during the influenza pandemic. She never knew what her brother would become. She never knew what he would do to her portrait. Ailani's smiling face had been used to carry a message she would never have endorsed. Her innocence had been corrupted by someone who should have protected her memory. The mystery was solved, but the museum faced a new question. The symbol was not original, but it was part of the painting's history. Should they remove it, or should they leave it as evidence of what had happened? The decision was difficult. Some argued that the symbol was now part of the painting's story. Removing it would erase a piece of history. The painting had a complex history. That history included both the original work and its later alteration. Both were significant. Others argued that the symbol was not art. It was graffiti. It was an act of defacement committed by someone with no artistic authority. It had no place on the canvas. The painting should be restored to reflect the artist's original vision. Both positions had merit. The museum's board debated the issue for weeks. Cora examined the paint layer again. She wanted to understand the technical implications of any decision. The added paint was chemically distinct. It had not bonded well with the original varnish. The two layers were separate. This meant removal was possible. It could be done without damaging Luca's work. The original paint underneath was intact. The symbol sat on top like a stain. It could be lifted cleanly. The museum's leadership made a decision. They consulted with ethics committees and conservation experts. They would restore the painting to its original 1907 state. The symbol would be removed. The portrait would be shown as Luca had intended it. The decision was based on respect for the artist and respect for the subject. Both Luca and Ailani deserved to be represented accurately. Cora began the removal process. She worked carefully. She used solvents that targeted only the newer paint. The chemistry had to be precise. Too strong a solvent would damage the original. Too weak, and the symbol would remain. She tested small areas first. She documented every step. The symbol slowly disappeared. It took 3 days of painstaking work. Beneath it, the locket was simple and plain. It was an elegant oval with no markings. It was exactly as Luca had painted it. The restoration was complete. The portrait of Ailani was finally seen as it had been over a century ago. Her smile was bright and warm. The painting glowed with life. The colors were vibrant. The details were sharp. It was as if time had been reversed. The Bridgeport Art Institute put the portrait on display. A placard was placed beside it. The placard told the story of the painting's restoration. It explained the discovery of the symbol. It described the investigation into Luca and Elias. It detailed the decision to remove the added paint. The text was clear and educational. It did not sensationalize. It presented the facts with clarity and respect. Visitors read the placard with fascination. They looked at Ailani's face with new understanding. They saw the innocence in her smile. They also saw the shadow that had been lifted. Many visitors spent long minutes in front of the painting. They talked quietly about what they had read. They discussed the ethical questions involved. The story of the portrait became a lesson. Art is not static. It changes over time. It carries the marks of everyone who touches it. Sometimes those marks are intentional. Sometimes they are acts of love. Sometimes they are acts of anger. The portrait of Ailani had been altered by someone who should have protected it, but it had also been restored by people who understood its value. The painting had survived. It had been saved. It stood as a testament to the resilience of art and the dedication of those who care for it. The museum also published a detailed report. The report included photographs of the symbol before removal. It included the results of the chemical analysis. It included the historical research into Elias and his political activities. Charts and graphs illustrated the findings. The report was shared with other museums and conservators. It was presented at conferences. It became a case study in art restoration. It showed the importance of careful investigation. It showed that assumptions could be wrong. It showed that the truth was often hidden beneath the surface. The report was praised for its thoroughness and its transparency. For Cora, the project was one of the most challenging of her career. She had uncovered a secret that had been hidden for nearly a century. She had solved a mystery that could have destroyed the reputation of an innocent artist. She had restored a painting to its original beauty. But she also understood the weight of what had been found. The symbol had been a violation. It had been a cruel act by a family member. Removing it had been the right decision, but it had also been an act of erasure. History was complicated. Art was complicated. Every restoration required judgment and care. She wrote about the experience in professional journals. She shared her insights with colleagues. The case became part of her legacy. Leo felt the same complexity. As a curator, he was responsible for presenting the truth. The story of the painting was now part of the museum's permanent record. It would be told to future generations. It would remind people that art has a life beyond the artist. It travels through time. It passes through many hands. Each person leaves a mark, whether visible or invisible. The painting of Ailani was a testament to that journey. Leo gave lectures about the case. He spoke at universities and professional gatherings. He used the story to illustrate broader points about the responsibilities of museums and the nature of historical inquiry. For Owen, the discovery was bittersweet. He had sold the painting without knowing its full history. He had not known about Elias's actions. He felt a sense of relief that the truth had been uncovered. He also felt sadness for Ailani. She had been used in a way she could never have imagined. Her innocent face had carried a message of hatred. But now, thanks to the museum, her portrait had been freed. Her smile could shine again without the shadow of her brother's ideology. Owen visited the museum several times after the restoration. He stood in front of the portrait for long periods. He felt a connection to Ailani that he had never felt before. She was no longer just a distant ancestor. She was a real person whose memory had been honored. The painting attracted many visitors. People came to see the girl who smiled in 1907. They came to hear the story of the restoration. They asked questions. They took photographs. They discussed the ethical dilemmas involved in the decision to remove the symbol. Some agreed with the museum's choice. Others thought the symbol should have been left as a warning. The conversations were rich and thoughtful. The painting had become more than just an artwork. It had become a catalyst for discussion about history, memory, and responsibility. School groups visited. Teachers used the story as a teaching tool. Students wrote papers about the case. The painting had found new life and new relevance. Alexander, the symbol expert, wrote an article about the case. He used it as an example of how extremist ideologies can infiltrate families and corrupt even the most innocent objects. He discussed the dangers of allowing political radicalism to go unchallenged. He praised the museum for its thorough investigation and its transparent handling of the discovery. His article was published in an academic journal. It was widely read and cited. Other scholars referenced it in their own work. The case became part of the scholarly literature on art history and political extremism. The portrait of Ailani now hangs in a prominent gallery at the Bridgeport Art Institute. It is displayed alongside other portraits from the same era. The gallery explores themes of family, memory, and social change in the early 20th century. Visitors often pause in front of it. They are drawn to the girl's smile. They wonder about her life. They imagine what she was thinking when Luca painted her. They do not see the symbol because it is no longer there. They see only what Luca intended them to see. A child, a moment, a smile that breaks the rules of its time. The painting has become one of the museum's most popular works. It draws people back repeatedly. The story serves as a reminder to conservators and curators everywhere. It shows the importance of questioning assumptions. It shows the value of scientific analysis. Every painting has secrets waiting to be discovered.